Hi everybody, it's meteorologist Joe Cioffi. Welcome to tonight's Joe Cioffi Show. It's one of those nights, folks. We've got flash flooding going on in parts of New Jersey from Route 78 southward, and they keep adding counties and subtracting others. Bottom line is, if you're in that stretch somewhere between 78 and 195, there's been some very heavy rains, and they're still going on. We also have flash flood warnings now extending into Staten Island, into New York City, and one in southern Nassau County on Long Island. So this is the kind of evening it's going to be. Oddly enough, the thunderstorm activity, at least in terms of what was on the radar, was actually more impressive last night than it is tonight. The difference is that the storms tonight are moving, literally creeping at under 10 miles an hour. They were moving slowly last night, but they were moving maybe at about 20 miles an hour, 20 to 25. So that's a big difference. Basically on a slow crawl here at 10 miles an hour. It's like driving home on the expressways or the parkways or the turnpike in rush hours. That's kind of how it looks in the upper atmosphere. So why don't we just go right off the bat? Now, it's 7:07 Eastern Time. So remember, if you're watching this on a replay, that all the radars that you see and the satellite loops, they are dated, and you want to make sure you get your latest weather information regarding any watches or warnings by going to your local National Weather Service office page. You can get that by going to weather.gov. And of course, if you're watching this after about 10 or 11 o'clock tonight, all of this is going to be, for the most, pretty much long done. But I've widened the local radar pictures here, one from Upton and the other one from Fort Dix in New Jersey. And you'll see the green boxes that are up there. Tonight's emphasis really is on flash flooding. We're not seeing a whole lot of lightning strikes on the radar in some of these cells. We're seeing some, but we're not seeing really a whole lot of them. But you'll notice the consequence of slow movement. First off, in the green box that's in southern Nassau County on Long Island, inside that box, there's an east-west stretched out heavy downpour that continues. So if you're on Long Island, it's basically south of the Northern State Parkway, going down toward the South Shore, and it runs east-west, getting absolutely clobbered with heavy rains of the order of several inches, all coming at a very short period of time, of course. And it's coming on top of what was about a 1 to, and some places, 2-inch rainfalls that we got here last night. So the ground is absolutely saturated. In the meantime, so back in New Jersey, in an area that is south of Route 78 and north and west of the Turnpike, that particular area in parts of Middlesex, western Monmouth County, going back west-southwestward, it's now exiting Hunterdon County, still clipping southern Somerset, but you're going to see this whole area kind of slide very slowly to the east-northeast. That area has been getting pounded by very heavy rains. And earlier, some of the heavier downpours were sitting in parts of Monmouth County. The chairman, Scott Briller, you mentioned rainfall in your area. Probably certainly from what has been going on in the last 48 hours. We're looking at rainfall totals in excess of 2 to 3 inches for sure. There is another flash flood warning that is down a little bit further south of 195 when you get into Ocean and Burlington counties there, and you're seeing still some heavy downpours. That yellow streak that's developed there on the northern edge of the southern line of that box. And I'm trying to see. Looks like they may have even added a couple of more down into parts of Atlantic County. So last night we had pretty wide coverage. When you're dealing in a situation like this, you look for these clusters that develop as opposed to one sweeping line. And when you see that, and when you're in a pattern now, remember, we're really being influenced by this upper high, and the steering winds aloft are very light, relatively light. And this stuff is just it forms and it just creeps along. and then it gradually falls apart. Here's the look from the Fort Dix radar, so you get a better view of what's happening down in New Jersey, for example. The intensity. Now, these are pretty strong cells that are up in north central Jersey. The ones that are south of 78 and north and west of the Turnpike, and you can see the warning getting extended eastward. There's some strong storms moving in through southern New Jersey and across central Delaware, back over into eastern Maryland, and that's a narrow line that's moving southeastward, and there's some pretty strong cells in that. Also, some scattered cells running around here to the north in parts of northern New Jersey, the Hudson Valley. They're not as clustered as what we have running around in central New Jersey. Here's the wide radar view tonight. Just make this a little bit smaller. There we go. And we'll do the zoom out. There it is. So here's the whole look as far as most of the U.S. is concerned. The thunderstorm activity is in patches. You got, of course, diurnal stuff that's going on across Virginia, North and South Carolina, down to Georgia, and back through parts of Tennessee. And not much happening out in the west. A little bit of action in southern New Mexico. The Rockies are quiet right now, and we're also seeing fairly quiet weather conditions up in the northwest and some scattered cells in and around the Great Lakes. I can tell you that with the hot air that's coming in as this last upper air trough gets out of the way, we are going to see probably a whole lot less as far as showers and thunderstorms are concerned over the next couple of days. We've had enough rain. I'm going to be curious to see whether that winds up impacting temperatures. You have to take that into account. We talked about the fact that the soil moisture content from the spring rains this year and early summer rains are pretty high in parts of the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic states. So that might actually help to hold temperatures down a notch or two. So if we wind up not going to 100 on Saturday and Sunday in areas like New Jersey, down into Delaware, and places maybe a little bit further to the north, it might be due to the fact that the rains of the last couple of days and the high soil moisture content would have prevented it. Now, here's our watches and warnings map for tonight. You see a large area of the plains, the eastern plains, across the middle and upper Mississippi Valley, through the Great Lakes and into the Northeast, either under a heat advisory or an excessive heat warning that they will go, either are up for the next couple of days or will be going up in the next 24 hours or so, starting with Friday and then lasting through the weekend. One of the problems here, and I just would, somebody mentioned to me today, when they were kids, the summer would come and it would get hot, and of course now we have watches and warnings up apparently for every drop of drizzle that falls. So I don't know. We've developed this expectation, I guess, that somehow the weather is supposed to be perfect all the time, and this is nothing really in terms of heat waves. We're talking about hot conditions, very humid conditions, extremely uncomfortable, make no mistake. And there are folks that have a real tough time with this sort of heat and humidity. But we've had long duration heat waves that have lasted in some places weeks, and in some places even over the course of months. If you go back and look at the records over the last 40 or 50 years, this is really a blip. What we're going to be seeing. But nonetheless, it's been a long time since temperatures have gone up over 100 in some of the bigger cities in the Northeast and in the northern Mid-Atlantic states. And, it's not every summer that temperatures go up over 100. So if it does happen, it'll make news. I'm going to be curious to see how much in the way of weather hysterics we're going to see when that, if that happens. Risk areas tonight. From the standpoint of severe weather, marginal risk up to about New York City and western Long Island. Now, I think most of this is due to the potential for flash flooding, and not so much with regards to downbursts and strong winds and hail, et cetera, although I guess it's certainly possible. But from what I've been seeing in terms of the lightning strikes on the satellite, it was not nearly as impressive tonight as it was last night. Slight risk over the Great Lakes, and you see that small tornado watch has popped up in southern Minnesota and in northwesternmost Iowa. Larger area of marginal risk covers that, and then of course you have your general area of thunderstorms everywhere else throughout much of the southern part of the U.S. The satellite loop tonight, and of course the remnants of Barry now are indistinguished. You can't really distinguish those from everything else that's going on. The upper trough, the jet stream flow from Canada that we were kind of on the edge on, moving these disturbances along, and all this residual tropical moisture that is in the eastern part of the United States. That is clearly obvious down into the state of Florida. You're seeing some tropical moisture. Clouds rolling in almost northeast, southwest from the Atlantic across Florida into the Gulf of Mexico. But you're not seeing there's nothing here really in terms of any kind of tropical development. To the north, the northern jet's still pretty active. You see that energy coming into the northwest. You have energy that's moving through Hudson's Bay and heading eastward into Labrador. So that will be really the driver in the longer term as far as breaking the heat pattern down when we get into the latter part of this weekend and into next week. So let's get to the models and take a look at what's going to be happening going forward. First off, let's look at the temperatures here. Now this is the GFS. It's the 2 o'clock in the afternoon map that you're seeing here. So if you want to allow for the high of the day, you might want to add a degree or two to some of these numbers. It's a little bit hard to see. I'll try to make it a bit bigger for you. Hang on. Let me raise this, make this a bit bigger. And you might be able to see what the GFS numbers are. I think that's a bit better here. So starting with Friday afternoon, 90s pushing up into New England, near New York City. That's a 92 print in northern New Jersey. I don't know exactly what those points are, but it's done in a grid fashion, so it may not represent any particular city. But they've got a 92 print there up in North Jersey, and a 90. And I'm having trouble here because of the light. I don't know if that's a 98 down in Atlantic City. It would seem a bit high on that grid point. 101 in that point that looks south. That's south and west of DC. But you've got 90s over a rather large area, geographic area in the east for tomorrow. And of course, you've got 90s going all the way down into Florida. We could take a sounding here at 2 o'clock in the afternoon just to see what the air temperature is. Now, I just pulled this point at 40.74 and 74.12 west, so that's probably not too far off from New York City. And at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it's got a temperature there of 91. And moving on as we go into Saturday, this is the look for Saturday. Oddly enough, I would have thought that the numbers on Saturday on the GFS would have been a little bit higher. They seem to actually be higher for Sunday now, because on Sunday, the next weather front is going to be approaching, and that might be aiding the heating. It's not going to be close enough to have any kind of impact with thunderstorms, I think, but the fact that the front is getting closer may bend the wind a bit more westerly ahead of it, and that could be why the temperatures are higher on Sunday now versus Saturday. But look, the bottom line is both days are going to be 90s to near 100. If we get over 100, we'll see. But watch, if it doesn't happen, I'm telling you, it's going to be because of the rains that we've had over the last couple of days with the soil moisture content. Certainly going to be horrifically humid through all of this. And here's Sunday's numbers. You've got a 98 print up there in North Jersey, 97 in Western Mass, 94 in Southwestern Maine, 102 in Northeastern Virginia. Now, Monday, we get this cold front to move through. It's going to, depending on the models you look at, the European wants to kind of move it along, in which case we'll get some showers and storms here on Monday, and then weather conditions will improve on Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday, Tuesday, Wednesday, most of Tuesday and all of Wednesday, Thursday would be nice, dry, and comfortable. The GFS is trying to hang that front up a little bit. You'll notice that Tuesday morning, the dew points up near New York City on the GFS are still close to 70. And why is that doing that? That's got to be wrong. There's something wrong here. 6Z. That is odd. That map has got to be, there's got to be a mistake here, because you go from, all right, hold on. I may be having a space moment. Just a second. I'm sorry. In my mind, my mind had flipped to thinking of the dew point map, and we're looking at the air temperature map. I'm 60. I'm entitled to have that happen to me. Okay, so we're still talking temperatures. I'm going to switch to the dew points in a moment. So here we have, the Monday afternoon temperatures. So the 90s are actually gone, and I think this is because the GFS is pushing the front through in the middle of the day with some showers and storms. Might be perhaps rushing it a bit, but we'll see. And then on Tuesday in the afternoon, we've got 70s all over the place. And actually, if you look down in southern New Jersey, down into Virginia and North Carolina, it actually has temperatures in the 60s, okay, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Tuesday. And the reason for that is because it's got the front just offshore, stalls it out, and there's a wave that develops on it, so it's just kind of waiting for the wave. So if you're north and west of the frontal boundary under clouds and overrunning rain, then you're going to have temperatures that are going to be not that hot. I'm not 100, I'm not really so sure that that's going to be the case. And then come Wednesday, you've got 80s coming back toward New York City, but it's still reasonable here in terms of temperatures, with temperatures in the 70s to low 80s. The 90s are not going to really come back until we get toward the latter part of next week and into next weekend maybe. You start to get into warmer and more humid conditions. Now, let's go to the dew points and take a look at those. Because really, at the end of the day, it's all about the humidity, and we want it to just go away. So here's the issue with regards to the dew points, is the fact that, all right, clearly when we're through Sunday, we're talking about dew points up in the 70s with temperatures up close to 100. Disgusting. And take a look at this. By Saturday evening, you've got dew points in the low 80s in northern Illinois, northern Indiana, Ohio. I mean, that's brutal stuff here. That green area and the yellow area, those are dew points of 60 or less, so that's what we want. And here we are at Monday afternoon, gets to about New York City and just kind of gets hung up a bit, and then starts to, you see those dew points start to really drop off during the day Tuesday. And again, waiting for that frontal boundary to move on by. And we're into some decent dew points now. A large area of the Great Lakes, the eastern Great Lakes, the mid-Atlantic states, and the Northeast Wednesday afternoon. Dew points in the 50s and even some dew points in the 40s when you head into parts of upstate New York and into New England. So the key for Monday is going to be whether that front gets hung up or not. So let's show you how it plays out on the surface map, and then we'll take a look at the upper air. So here we go with those westerly isobars on Friday. They're a little up. There are weak upper air disturbances on the southern end of that jet stream that's lying across southern Canada that will be moving across it. And when each one of those disturbances goes by, you see these showers and thunderstorms that are dropping down from the northwest. That's for Friday night. I don't know how much of that actually holds together. And though that's rain in terms of rainfall amounts, that's not what the radar looks like. I'm using this map because the isobars show up better. Same happens Saturday night. Whether they hold together or not remains to be seen. The day sides look pretty quiet. And then here's Monday with the front literally on top of us, starting to stall. We'll get to some showers and thunderstorms. And there's your wave that's off the New Jersey coast. I tend to think that that'll be further along to the northeast and faster, and the front will drop southeastward from there. And you see the problem for Tuesday, when we showed you those temperature profiles across Virginia and North Carolina, that's because the front is stalled out from through central Georgia, through South Carolina to the North Carolina coast, northeastward to off the coast of southern New England. So it's kind of hanging there. The high drops more south rather than to the east. So the initial push is further south on the GFS, and then finally it drops far enough south and east so that you still have some lingering precip off the southeast coast of the U.S., but in terms of the northeast and the mid-Atlantic states, particularly the mid-Atlantic states, we see weather conditions genuinely improving later Tuesday night into Wednesday. And then the rest of the week, we just wait for that high to just move out. Takes all week for it to do so. So if we get a little bit of luck, we might hold on to those dry dew points for a while. Now, the upper air on the, I want to show you the European and the GFS, because there are notable differences here. And we talked about this yesterday. I'm going to make this a little smaller. Make sure you guys can see okay, and you can. So there you go. I got to try to remember to keep the dates and time on there for you to be able to see it. Now, watch the GFS here. So here's your ridge that's in the east, okay? You see where the northern jet, where all those lines are closer together up in upstate New York and through New England and southern Canada. So that's the bottom of your northern jet stream. And there are little kinks in there that move along. That's why you see the models producing the chance for some showers and storms at night. And here's your trough, and this is your cold front that moves through for Monday. Now, the problem is that the GFS strengthens this trough, takes the southern end of it, and drops it all the way down into the western Gulf of Mexico, okay? And that causes the front to get hung up here. If you look at the winds along the east coast and the upper winds, they go southwesterly. They don't go southerly like they did yesterday. They go southwesterly, so the front makes it a bit further south on this run. And it gets hung up. It has to wait for either the trough to swing through or just to completely fall apart. In this case, the bottom part just weakens and drops down into the western Gulf. The northern part eventually does pull away to the northeast, and those upper air winds turn back westerly as we go through next week. The Europeans has all along had a different and more a better view and a more positive outcome as far as lowering the humidity and not having the stalling issue like the GFS has, because it never really drops the bottom of that trough like the GFS does. It's much weaker on the southern end. It basically swings that upper air shortwave and just swings it through into New England, and then on it goes, and goodbye. And that's what I'm hoping happens, because that will have produce the fewest complications with regards to the weather going forward with respect to next week. It's not a whole lot of there's not much happening at all in the tropics in the Atlantic. So I didn't set up the satellite ahead of time, but trust me, there's not really much going on there at the moment. And there's a couple of weak systems out in the Pacific that may or may not develop. I'm particularly, I've been fascinated by the fact that the Pacific has been so subdued, which I think is due to the fact that the El Nino is weakening a whole lot faster than than forecast, and that is going to have an impact, I think, maybe on the Atlantic hurricane season. But it'll depend on where we are in that. Has it, there's a point where if it weakens enough, has it weakened enough, or does it need to weaken a bit more? For that, we'll know soon enough when we get into the month of August to see how active things get with respect to tropical systems. All right, let's go to the chat board. I see a lot of folks are on tonight. It's nice to see everybody. Scott, you mentioned the chairman, Scott Brill. You brought up an interesting stat to me yesterday, and I didn't realize it, but at least from the standpoint of New York City, it has hit 100 degrees since 1869, which is how far back the records go. It's hit 100 in New York City 53 times. It's hit 0, 50 or less, 55 times. So it was kind of interesting that both those numbers, it's just a coincidence that both those numbers are about the same. And we are, which is more, I talked about this with my colleague Joe Rayo about which is the harder number to accomplish. Both numbers, at least as far as New York City is concerned, both have their challenges, and they really have to do with the wind direction and cloud cover in both instances. Very important. A west wind would probably help to push temperatures over 100 in New York City. I know on Long Island, the ideal wind is probably more of a west-northwest or even a northwest wind to do it. But a west wind. But a west wind in the wintertime in these really deep, cold Arctic air masses actually puts a stop to temperatures falling in New York City. So it's hard to see temperatures get down to even to near zero with a west wind. You need more of a northerly component to the wind. And then if you have a more northerly component to the wind with respect to 100 degrees, that could actually knock off, depending how much of a northerly component, could ultimately wind up knocking down the temperatures. So I would say that, I mean, if I had to pick one, I think it's probably harder to get to zero than it is to get to 100, but both are not easy nuts to crack by any stretch of the imagination. So Daniel Fitzsimmons, are we going to La Nina or neutral? A weak La Nina. Look, I don't think we're going. Forget the La Nina part, but because we're never going to get there. At this point, but we may be going to neutral, and that might be enough to spur activity. William Huber, Paul Roman, Lisa Nieves, Johnny Quest, Izzy D. Thank you so much for hitting Super Chat tonight. I really appreciate it greatly. Thank you so much. You guys don't have to do it. And all of you are Patreon members, which is even better, on my subscription platform on Patreon. And by the way, if you want to join up, I'll just throw it up here on the chat board. It's just $2 a month for, I guess if you want to call it nonstop weather, except when I'm sleeping. But the link is up there for you. There's been an offshore flow off of California for most of the week. Yes, the westerly jet is still a fairly dominant feature up in the west, particularly up as you go up into the northwest, and that has kept it. That's kept the pattern on the flat side, basically the ridge across the United States, more down in the southern half. It hasn't really been able to pop up in through the west, at least not yet. Bob Hurley on my Facebook page, the picture from 30 years from now. Yeah, I have to tell you, there are days when I actually feel like how that picture looks, and right now I'm feeling that. I went to the dentist today because I had to have a temporary crown put in for a tooth that I broke a couple of weeks ago. So I'm kind of feeling drained between that and all these flash flood warnings and the severe weather that I've been having to deal with over the last couple of days. Johnny Quest has got the rowboat and the oars. You keep waiting for your 150 some odd inches of rain there in the mountains of Western Virginia. I don't think you're getting too much tonight on the radar from what I saw, so you are getting a little bit of a break, which is a good thing. Paul Roman, I know you're up in Ulster County, and at least today, the radars up your way have been very, very, very quiet. Wilfenaz, the Weather Service saves lives. If companies and businesses don't heat mornings, it's on them when lawsuits happen. Well, you're quite right. The Weather Service does. I'm a big supporter of the Weather Service. They do. I think they do. Considering all the things they have to deal with, God bless them, because they do, I think they really do a fantastic job. Sometimes we can sit here and question certain things. Everybody wants to armchair quarterback, but you know what? At the end of the day, when you look at the warnings, the severe weather risk areas that they put up, and how how well the forecasts turn out most of the time. I think they do an absolutely fantastic job. Hate when Carl recalls says, hate when you have a tropical depression like Barry and all the moisture is thrown at us. Yeah, the remnant tropical moisture. As I said, there's no distinguishable circulation anymore. Even yesterday, there was nothing much of that left, but there was a lot of tropical moisture in the mix, and that is, that's getting all squeezed out of the atmosphere. Yes, it got squeezed out there yesterday. We had this upper trough that moved through. I'll tell you something. I think whether Barry, was there as an identifiable feature or not, I think you probably would have wound up with a similar outcome to all of this if you hadn't had Barry develop into a tropical storm, or they had it up to a minimal hurricane for about 10 minutes. But all that tropical moisture would have been there. Whether that it organized into a tropical storm or not, I don't know that it would have made a huge difference in terms of the kind of weather that we're having today. I would think we would have probably had the same outcome or something similar. Those storms around the 78, will they make it to Long Island? I thought earlier that they might push into Brooklyn and Queens, and then, of course, after sunset, they're going to start to fall apart. Let me just see what the status is right now. I'm going to look at this off screen here. And you know what? They have really weakened a lot, okay? I'm just looking at the radar right now. That whole area has weakened considerably. So I'm thinking that you're probably not going to see those make it. And the next chance of anything important, unless you get something from one of those nighttime systems dropping down over the next 3 nights, a lot of that stuff's going to be dying off before it gets here, unless you get a surprise and one of those dying cells holds on a bit longer. Your next chance for anything substantial probably won't come until Monday. But Lisa Nieves, the lightning last night was, the lightning on Long Island last night was incredible. From what I missed it because I was here, but I did see, watching the radar, the lightning strike. They were completely out of control. It was as busy a lightning show on the radars, and I got confirmation by some of my colleagues that are on Long Island saying that the lightning last night was incredible, as one of the words that was used in all of this. I'm just running back through the chat. I'm just trying to. There's Bill. William. You're gonna get used. Your pool certainly should be warm enough by now. I know we were talking about this back a month or so ago when we couldn't get you couldn't get anything resembling a warm day on Long Island, and even string back-to-back sunny days. But you got to have your pool in good shape at the moment. Watching the Yankee games is Mark G. Listening to me, grilling tuna, drinking a beer. Add a cigar to that, and your life will be complete. Donut hole for rain for you again. 1500ths last night, 100th today, and still not helping the veggie gardens. Yeah, that's the frustrating thing in this situation with these thunderstorms. It's where's the target? If North Jersey today didn't really get very much. It was all more central Jersey. Last night it was more North Jersey. There were holes yesterday through Ocean County. They got it today. Usually what winds up happening is over time, over the course of a couple of weeks, in a pattern like this, it tends to even out. So maybe the next time around it'll be your turn. I also tend to think, by the way, that Monday, depending on the timing of that front on Monday, if we could push the temperatures up, that the front comes through a little late in the day, that we might have a setup for some strong or severe thunderstorms. We'll see. Again, we're going to definitely evaluate that situation as we go through the weekend. Nice to see you on board, Shelly Man Studios. Distracted by Mark G's distracted by the doubleheader. I just lost your. There you go. You got to work outside all weekend, Shelly Man Studios. That's not fun. not in this heat. Make sure you stay hydrated, okay? Definitely stay hydrated. And just running back to check out the rest of the chat board here. It's always nice to see an active crowd on the chat. And by the way, if you're watching this on a replay, you can certainly add your comments. I welcome all comments on the videos, and I do respond to them. I don't always get to them right away, but I do try to get to them within a day or so, and answer. So I do appreciate it when you leave your comments and or your opinions. As long as you stay on topic and don't stray into weird places, I'm good with it. William Uber, North Shore, what a show. I wish I was on the bluff looking over the sound. Yeah, the North Shore, the lightning last night was just absolutely crazy. Chuck Cardillo, have a great evening, you two, and definitely stay safe, as everybody, I hope, does for Friday and the weekend. Daniel Fitzsimmons, the best weather sites and apps. Well, I happen to think that my app is very good, and you can download that by going to the App Store, or I know it's a shameless segue. Going to the App Store or going to Google Play and downloading meteorologist Joe Cioffi, or just plain old Joe Cioffi. It should show up, and it's absolutely free. So you can go ahead and do that. I have to tell you, I'm not the right person to ask about other people's apps, because I really don't use weather apps that much on my phone. I'm always working in an office setting, or when I'm home, so I'm seeing it on the desktop, and I'm with stuff that I have and from websites and so on. So I'm not really too familiar with all of the apps, and there's some really good ones out there. I see what the guys show me. There's this subscription radar app that's about, I think it's $10 a month for iPads, and I mean, they're great. If you're a weather buff, it's terrific. But I'm not really the right person to ask. And as far as making an app is concerned, that involves writing complicated code that is way above my pay grade. I don't know how to write that code. It's too complicated for me. It took me a while to figure out HTML for websites, but for the apps, you got to find somebody. I have someone that helped me build both my apps. That he did an absolutely incredible job. And actually, we're waiting now we're waiting for the update. It's in the hands of Google and Apple. So we're waiting for them to push the update through, and as soon as they do, if you have the app, you will get the notification that your app is indeed updating. All right, folks, let's end it right here. It's coming up on 7:45 Eastern Time. Thanks for being here tonight. And I didn't do a weather in 5 this morning because of the dentist. So we'll be back to normal schedule tomorrow with weather in 5, 5 days in 5 minutes. We do that tomorrow morning at usually before 9 o'clock Eastern Time. And we'll have our Friday live stream at, I don't know, maybe we'll shoot for 6 o'clock tomorrow night, just to get it done early so that everybody, Friday nights, everyone's, starts their weekend and they're out there having fun. So we'll do the live stream maybe a little bit earlier tomorrow night and get it done. Have a great evening, folks. Thanks for being here. We'll see you tomorrow.